And so I've hired 2 matchmakers in my adult life. I have worked with 2 different dating coaches. And overarching the conversation right now is we all want to be community matched. People want their married friends to be thinking on their behalf, or even other single friends to be thinking on their behalf. I just got set up on a date a few weeks ago by a colleague at a university in Nashville. And she and I have worked together, and she said, "Have you met this guy? He's great. He works with me." And I said, "No, but I would love to." She set us up on a first date. We had a great time. It did not move forward, but I sent her an email and I said, "Super nice guy. Thank you so much. But mostly, thank you for being brave enough to set up 2 single people and not letting the fear of it not working keep you from doing it." Overarching, Paula, the singles we talk to, the singles I'm friends with, the singles in Single Purpose League, we want our friends to set us up.
Oh, wow. That is so good to know. I've been trying to do this with my brother, and
I know. I tell you, I think he's cute.
Hey, friends, and welcome to the Paula Faris Show. I'm your host, Paula. I am so grateful that you are joining the show today. If you're new, welcome. On this show, we talk about the things that you want to talk about. And the number one topic that my community, that you have asked me to talk about, is relationships and dating. So we are continuing our series on relationships and dating. But before we jump into today's episode with a dear friend of mine, I want to share some comments that you all shared with me based on last week's episode with Caitlin Nillis. So Caitlin, she's known as Honestly Caitlin on Instagram. She is a single mom of 2. She shared her story about what it's like dating as a single mom, but also that she and her ex are trying to work it out. And one of the biggest stressors in their relationship was the mental load. So they chose to do the Fair Play cards. I gave away 3 copies of them in my personal newsletter last week. By the way, if you're not signed up for my personal newsletter at paulafarisofficial.com, make sure you do so. We have fun giveaways, you have insider access, and an authentic look at my life. Again, that's paulafarisofficial.com. But congratulations to Angel, to Lori, and to Kristen for winning the Fair Play cards. And what these do, it's a deck of hundreds of cards, and it just lays out the household tasks and really just starts a healthy conversation about all that goes in to managing and navigating a home. But some of the comments that you shared with me kind of broke my heart because it is so common to feel like this. The reality is that there's always one partner that's doing the majority of the work at home, that's carrying the load, and that creates a ton of tension in the relationship, so much so that bitterness and resentment can build up. And next thing you know, you're divorcing because somebody didn't take the garbage out. I know that sounds ridiculous, but it just builds and builds and builds. But Lori shared this with me. She said, "Paula, this has been a problem in my marriage since day one, and it's ongoing. It's the advice that I give younger people now when planning a marriage, but it's hard to fix it after 26 years. So Lori's getting a copy of these Fair Play cards. This is what I would tell to Lori and any of you who are feeling this way, which I can say is probably the strong majority of you ladies out there. The reality is we are carrying the majority of the load at home. The reality is bitterness and resentment do creep up, but do not diminish your feelings about this. Do not diminish the reality of the situation. And I would encourage you, it all starts with a healthy conversation. And by healthy, I mean when emotion is low and cognition is high. So not when tempers are flared, not when emotions are heated. So have a healthy conversation about how much you're carrying and what it's doing to you. The Fair Play cards, they're a great way to start just having this healthy conversation, but don't brush it off. Don't brush it to the side because this is impacting you and it's impacting your relationships so much so that it does become one of the biggest sources of tension in any relationship. You owe it to yourself. Have a healthy conversation. And it can start with the Fair Play cards. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. I just wanted to share that with you, though, because those comments really, really resonated. So today's episode, I've invited my dear friend, Annie F. Downs, onto the show. You might know Annie from her very popular podcast. It's called That Sounds Fun. Annie is a fun human being. Annie is also in her 40s. She's also single and she's never been married. And I wanted to invite her onto the show to give a different perspective about what it's like to date in your midlife, what it's like to still be looking for the one, and also what our single friends want us married people to know. I wanted to talk about this particular aspect of relationships and dating because there are so many single people in my life, and I bet if you took a moment to think about it, there's a lot of single people in your life too. 40% of Americans are single. Either they have never been married, like Annie, or they're divorced, or they're widowed. I know I have a brother who's in his 50s, and people ask about him all the time, but I'm hesitant to set him up with anyone because I don't want it to backfire. But Annie's going to explain why our single friends want to be community matched and what they want us to do, the part that they want us to play as their married friends in the whole process. And I want to do something really special for Annie too. Annie says that she's single. She's ready to mingle. She has a type. You're going to die, by the way, what her type is. It is hilarious. But we all know somebody that's single in our lives. And I want us to play matchmaker for Annie. She's going to share her Instagram handle. She's going to share what she's looking for. But our single friends want to be community matched. Number one, that is the overarching theme. So without further ado, here is Annie F. Downs for a very fun but frank conversation about what it's like to be single in your 40s and what our single friends want us married friends to know. Annie, I was so excited to have this conversation with you that I actually wanted it to start an hour earlier than it was supposed to.
Paula, you don't have to tell people this.
No, I do. I have a lot of things going for me, but time management is not one of them, nor is managing my personal or professional calendar. So I literally sent you a link that this was supposed to start at 11. I sent you an email, and yet I programmed it in my calendar as 10. So I text you right beforehand, Hey, Annie, I'm so excited. Give me 5 minutes. And how did you respond?
Well, I was at a coffee shop 7 blocks from my house in New York City. And I said, holy cow, Paula, I'm so sorry. I have it wrong on my calendar. My buddy Zach was sitting beside me. And I said, Zach, it's been lovely seeing you. I am now officially late to a podcast. And I left and I ran out the door and I got 3/4 of the way home. And you said, nope, I had the time wrong. And I said, let's do it anyway. I'm almost home.
So I was just so excited to
save
conversation with you, Annie, that I wanted to start earlier. And then I struck that fear in you. I apologize. But here we are.
Fine.
Here we are. Annie, I'm so grateful. You've got such a great spirit and you're always up for anything.
Thanks,
and you're such a good sport about everything. I want to talk about dating because, we're in a friend group. There's several friend groups. And, you've made it very clear that you are still looking for a husband. You're in your 40s. I want to know because there are so many singles out there. I think there's more singles today than there ever have been in the U.S.
Yes.
They're single because they're divorced or widowed or never married, which is your category. I've seen numbers range from 110 million Americans to 127 million Americans. There's a lot of single Americans. I want to know, first of all, how different is the dating game now that you are, can I say you're in your 40s? Can I tell people that?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
How different?
I couldn't control it at all. I did not pick when I was born, so I'm proud of it.
How much different is dating today than it was maybe 20 years ago when you were at the University of Georgia?
Yeah, go Dogs. I'll start by telling you the stat is about 40% of Americans are unmarried and about 20 to 30% of Christian Americans are unmarried. So our churches on Sunday mornings are about 1/3 unmarried people.
Repeat that one more time.
Yeah. 40% of the U.S. is unmarried. 20 to 30% of our churches are unmarried. So that means on a Sunday morning, if you look around, 2 out of 3 people are married and 1 out of 3 people in the room with you is not currently living with a spouse.
Okay. And whether they are widowed or they've never been married.
Right. Widowed, divorced, or never married.
Okay.
That's right. Wow. That's exactly right. And so it's really important, Paula, for us to talk about dating and us to talk about singleness in the faith space and outside of the faith space. But because what it is doing is it is changing the role of women in the world. It is changing the needs that women have, and it is changing dating for men and women within the church. and outside the church. So how is dating different now than it was 20 years ago? Technology has changed it pretty significantly. When you and I were in college, we didn't even have Facebook. We emailed each other if we weren't just running into, boys at the time, boys left voicemails on our answering machine.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like that's how we all
answering machines when we had rotary dial.
That's it. All the roommates gathered around to listen to the answering machine. This is what modern daters are missing out on. You miss out on, you don't know who called you until you listen to the 5 messages with all the roommates gathered around wondering which dude is asking you on a date on your answering machine. So that's one way it's really changed, Paula, is that there's a lot that technology has given us as far as dating and opportunities and the variety of people you can be exposed to. What has been lost is the limited opportunity that makes you pick, right? Like the limits. It's the same problem we have when we can't decide where to go eat in a big city versus a small town.
Yeah.
If you're going to eat in New York City, you've got first we got to narrow down the neighborhood. And then we got to narrow down the type of food. And then here are the 3 of those Chinese restaurants to pick from. Where I grew up, or even in Athens, it was kind of like, well, we've got 5 choices. 2 of them are Mexican food. What do you want to do? And I think that the expanding of opportunity has led to some really interesting things. And it has allowed us to always wonder if there's something better.
Right. How has that, it's almost like a supply and demand issue too.
That's right.
Choices. How does that factor into staying true to what you want out of somebody and what you want out of a relationship and not compromising what you want, knowing that there's just fewer fish in the ocean? Like, how do you navigate that?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing because in my 20s, I was looking for some big category kind of men. Here are a couple of things that really matter to me, but mostly I was looking in my community, right? I was dating guys in my community because that's who was there and they ticked off a couple of the boxes. Well, now because we're allowed to be so much pickier when you're making a dating profile on Hinge or whatever, you go like, well, he's got to be, I could do a whole episode. He's got to be tall. No, he doesn't. He has no control over his height. His height does not determine your safety in a relationship. And a lot of women think it does. The guy's height is never about the guy. It's always about the woman's insecurities. And so now we can pick, how tall is he? What kind of job does he have? What are his friends like? Because we can swipe through his pictures, right? And so I think one of the things that has happened is that now men and women have the opportunity to go, I can make my own money. I can satisfy myself or someone else sexually in a way that makes me not have to be in a committed relationship. I have a thriving friend group. I don't have to get married. So if this person doesn't tick all my boxes, I'm unwilling to make the sacrifices to try because I have a fulfilled life without that.
Yes.
And that's good and bad. It's both. It's yes and. You know me, Paula, you've watched dating relationships with me. Like, I do have a very full and fulfilling life.
Absolutely.
I also really want to get married and I enjoy dating. And so I find myself having to go, hey, don't be picky about that. That actually doesn't matter. Don't be picky about that. That doesn't actually matter. But culture has taught me that I can order my Subway sandwich the exact way I want it. And I can also order my husband the exact way I want him. And that's not true.
Wow. That's really fascinating. What is it like? You just mentioned one of the dating apps. When I think about what would happen if anything happened to John and how I would navigate that, like the thought of it gives me major anxiety, because
Sure.
things have changed and the thought of putting my profile out there, having a bunch of, random first dates with people, that to me sounds so incredibly stressful. But again, you've been navigating this. So
That's right.
Is it like, tell me some of the good and the bad and the ugly of the new way of dating and signing on to these apps. Like, are you a fan? Are you not a fan?
I'm both. So, we have this singles community called Single Purposely. There's about 2,000 Christian singles in it. And we talk to them all day long, every day. And one of the main questions is which app works? And the honest answer, Paula, is the app that works in your community is the app that works.
Okay.
And it is different in every city and it's different in every community. You know, like there are apps just for Jewish couples who want to find each other. Jewish people want to be in a Jewish couple.
Yes.
That isn't me. And so that app doesn't work for me. If someone said, does that app work? I'd be like, well, not for me. And the same is true for Hinge or Bumble or Tinder or whatever. The Holy, eHarmony, Match.com, you can go on forever. There isn't a right one that I can say is the right one. What I always say to people is ask other people who are dating which ones they're doing. If you see someone going on dates or if you see someone dating someone, my first question is always, how'd you meet? And that's anybody's first question, but I'm asking because I'm going, where did you find a guy that was also looking for what you're looking for? Because it removes the complication and the confusion of I met someone, I'm single and he's single and we showed up at the same dinner.
Yeah.
And we don't actually know if the other one's looking to date right now or not. But when you're on an app, there's an intentionality of that guy is on here because he's looking to date. And so if you are wanting to go on dates and get practice and really I hope you never have to use any of them. I hope John and you never have to use any of them. In a world, you would learn how to swim in this ocean. Everybody can learn how to swim in this ocean, but it isn't fun. No, I don't know anybody who thrives in it long term. Kind of what I see my friends and I do, Paula, is jump in and do it for 3 or 4 months. And you've gone on a handful of dates and it feels like a part-time job. And then you go, I want a break. And you take a break.
Yep.
And if you haven't met somebody in that window of time. So I like apps. I think they're fine. I think the main gift of apps is you are finding men, for me as a female, who is looking for a guy. Every guy on there is intentional about doing something romantically versus are we just friends and I'm confused about what we're doing. So that's really the big gift of them.
I have friends who've met on JDate. You mentioned the Jewish app.
Yeah.
Married, and they've met. One of my good friends, Sarah, met her husband online. So it works when you see it.
It work, totally works.
When you see it work and when you see it not work. Does it not work because it's user error? Like you're not being forthright about what your non-negotiables are. You're not being totally open and transparent. When you see it not work, is it typically the app or is it user error?
Yes. It is both. One of the things my friend Kelly's counselor said to her that we all use is be as weird as you can on your profile. Like, don't try. You actually don't want everyone to like you. You don't want, there's no medal for having the most likes. In fact, what you actually want is to be as fully you as you possibly can on a profile so that 2 or 3 men go, that weird one is the one I want to know. And so you want to actually be as fully you as you possibly can. That's keeps it from being user error. What usually happens with user error when it is an Annie problem is that I haven't been a good version of myself. I also think the other time user error happens is when you are swiping in a vacuum, when you are not telling your friends, when you're not letting anyone else see. Favorite pastime of singles at dinner is to pass around your phone and let other people see your profile and go like, hey, that actually doesn't look like you. Hey, you would never really say that. Oh man, that is so funny. That's such a hot picture of you. That's totally the way I see you. I've had single men that are friends of mine look at my profiles before and be like, I've never seen you do anything like that. Why did you say water skiing? You can't water ski. What are you doing? And so that's when it's user error. The apps are imperfect. They are a business first. They are not mostly concerned about my soul and my spirit and my love life. They are mostly concerned about keeping their employees employed. And so you have to remember that there's an algorithm to it. And there's all sorts of reels and all sorts of accounts on Instagram and on TikTok that are trying to tell you how to gamify the app so that they show you the guys that you want.
Wow.
So like, don't like guys that you actually would like. And then they'll keep serving you more like tricky stuff like that makes it feel like, is this a maze I have to go through?
Yeah.
And that's when it's app error. And when you kind of go like, this isn't going to work for me. And I'll tell you, Paul, a lot of people go, I don't want to meet someone that way. Okay. You do not have to, but
they want it to feel
that's
organic.
right. That is overarching. And so I've hired two matchmakers in my adult life. I have worked with two different dating coaches, and overarching the conversation right now is we all want to be community matched. People want their married friends to be thinking on their behalf, or even other single friends to be thinking on their behalf. I just got set up on a date a few weeks ago by a colleague at a university in Nashville. And she and I have worked together, and she said, have you met this guy? He's great. He works with me. And I said, no, but I would love to. She set us up on a first date. We had a great time. It did not move forward, but I sent her an email and I said, super nice guy. Thank you so much. But mostly, thank you for being brave enough to set up two single people and not letting the fear of it not working keep you from doing it. Because I think that's what stops a lot of my married friends is they're like, well, I don't want him to hurt her. I don't want her to hurt him. I don't want things to be awkward if we invite them all to the kid's birthday party. But y'all might know single men that I might want to meet. And it's risky for the married people. But overarching, Paula, the singles we talk to, the singles I'm friends with, the singles in Single Purpose League, we want our friends to set us up.
Oh, wow. That is so good to know. I've been trying to do this with my brother. And
I know. I tell you, I think he's cute.
He's adorable, and he's in his early 50s, and he loves his dog, and he lives in Denver. But
he lives in Denver. That's yes.
And he wants to stay in Denver. Like, I've tried to set him up, and he's hesitant to like even listen to me because I'm his annoying younger sister still, even though I'm like 49. I'm hesitant because of what you just said. I don't want it not to work out and then it to be awkward because it's my brother.
Yes.
And my brother,
that's right.
So cute. Like, I might link to his Facebook page in the show notes. That's how cute he is.
Yeah. Yes. Give the gal some opportunity.
I'm telling you, but he wants I think at this point he's kind of set in his ways. He's in his early 50s. I say he's the best looking kid of the four of us in the family. And, you know, my mom's been in assisted living, and I think I have a new appreciation for him. I have to make sure that, yes, the three sisters in the family, and this is something I'd love for you to kind of like call out too. We're like, Dan, you could do it because you're the single one. You can go visit mom more because we have family. I have to be really careful that I don't say that because he's leading a very full life. And just because I have children, right, and I have other obligations does not mean that my life is any busier or any more important than his. And so I'd love for you to kind of speak to that. What's something, and this is a circle of trust here, Annie, okay?
Yeah.
What is something that you want to tell your married friends right now? Like, in all honesty, and I know we can project this, my life is busier. Oh, Annie can do it. She's the single one. Annie must have so much free time because she's the single one. What would you like to tell us about that whole narrative?
Yeah. I mean, I honestly, Paula, will tell you, y'all are a little bit right. We actually do only have to care for ourselves on a daily basis. When I get home from work, my house looks exactly the way I left it. When you get home from work, there are a lot of people who have been operating in that home, and a lot has changed. When we go to conferences on the weekend, I go home and there are not dishes and laundry to do. And most of the women sitting in the room have been gone all day Saturday, and they go home to dishes and laundry. And so there is some truth in my life has less other people complications in it than a married woman or a mom. So I actually am okay when there are times when people say, hey, we would love to spend time with you. Annie, I'd love to. I have a lot of mom friends that say things like this. I would love to see. We were just talking about a shared friend earlier. She's homeschooling her kids. And what she has said to me is, I would love to go on a walk before 8 p.m. or after 6 p.m. And so she is not saying my life is less important than hers. She's saying, is there a world where you could fit into our lives in this season? And I can. When I get married, and if I have kids, that will shift. And so I think the thing I would say is to our married friends is, I actually don't think y'all think your lives are more important than ours or busier than ours. I actually probably think most of my married friends are overly aware of how busy single people's lives are. I think the bigger question is, have we communicated between each other enough to know where the give and take needs to be?
That's good.
So for example, the give and take with our friend here is her schedule is limited in ways that mine is not currently. Can I fit into her schedule? And her give and take for me is, I can totally make that work if you will also let me talk about how I got my heart broken last week. By a dude, right? And even though that isn't your story anymore, will you sit with me in my loneliness and not tell me the grass is always greener? Right? Because that can sometimes be the way we try to help each other is go, loneliness in marriage is worse than loneliness in singleness. And I bet that's very true. That's not super helpful after a breakup. And so what I would encourage our married friends to do is to level up your communication. So just like you're talking about with your brother and setting people up, my friend who set me up with her coworker, the level of communication is, hey, as the single person, I will not hold you accountable for how your coworker treats me. I will not hold you accountable to whether this works or not. What I feel is very loved that you love someone and you love me and you know we both have desires that you might be able to help meet. And so, but we have to have that communication of, I'm not going to hold you to that. I'm not going to hold you that. And if things do go sideways with this coworker, I won't keep using your brother as an example because I already said I thought he's cute. So
no, we can totally use it. But I have a lot of single people in my life. And I think that's the thing is we all have so many single people in our life right now.
Yes.
I want to help.
That's right. So as you think of someone, let's say you had a friend that was one of your colleagues when you were on TV here. And you said, okay, Annie, I hope this works. And we go on one date and I find out that he doesn't pay for people's food. I would never call you and say, Paula, I don't know how you and I stay friends when you introduce me to that guy. In fact, what I would say is, hey, I don't think that's going to work. You're kind of not going to believe this story. And thank you so much for even considering me when this guy's name came to your mind, because I would have never met him without you. And sometimes, Paula, what ends up happening is your colleague that won't pay for my dinner, his roommate goes to my church and we would have never met if you wouldn't have introduced me to your colleague and we wouldn't have sat at dinner and I'd have told him where I go to church. He said, actually, my roommate goes to that church. He goes to the same service. Here's his name. And the next Sunday we meet and we fall in love and that's the guy I end up with. But that would not have happened if I wouldn't have been on dinner with the guy you introduced me to that I did not like.
Wow. See, and I think we have to get over our own fear. Right. And we have to get over ourselves, those of us that are in a relationship and are scared of setting one of our single friends up because of what might happen.
Yeah. And what singles have to get over their fear of asking their married friends to advocate for them because it feels vulnerable, because it feels like we feel like y'all have crossed some finish line we can't finish. And that's not true either. And so there's a vulnerability on both sides that will actually lead to deeper friendship, whether people get married because of it or not.
Yes. And a lot of people are choosing to be single. Can you talk about
That's right.
how fulfilled you feel? Like you don't need to get married. You want to.
That's right.
You're very fulfilled. Can you talk about how fulfilling single life can be and maybe why some people are choosing to stay single?
Yeah. I think because in our modern day, not for everyone, for a lot of people, mostly for privileged people, there's an ability to make enough income that you can live a single life. That is not true for everyone. But what I'm seeing in a lot of friends is if you can get a job and live on a budget, that really in the 50 years ago, 100 years ago, that was one of the main reasons women got married is there was not career paths that allowed them to self-support. And so that was a reason that they had to get married. Now, you said it perfectly right. I don't have to in order to survive. I do not have to in order to not be homeless. There are women today in the US who do stay in relationships that are not healthy or good because they're providing for their children. That is not my story today. And so I don't have to be in a relationship, but I really want to. I think there's a lot of value in having someone up close to you and the accountability of it and the joy of it and the butterflies of it all, right? But that being said, what I get to do is make decisions, hopefully in healthy community, but I just get to decide what I think God has for me to do versus deciding around, well, where are my kids in school and where's my husband's job and all these things that are added decisions you have to factor in every time you want to move to another city or switch careers or change churches or make a new friend group. And because there are a lot of us, Paula, there's a lot of abundant life in singleness, if you choose to have friendships that are intimate, and obviously I don't mean sexually intimate. I mean, relationally, spiritually, in your stories, are you being in intimate friendships that allow you to feel known and loved, and even when you're not perfect? And
Good, Annie.
And because we can find that in friendships, many of us, it removes the I have to find a partner. But I'll tell you, Paula, for our friends listening that are either in their 30s or have friends in their 30s or late 20s, it feels different then. Your late 20s and early 30s, you feel like, I have to find this person now. This is when I have to do this. And it feels like that until it doesn't. And so there is a ebb and flow of this. I think there is for everyone, right? Like for our friends listening who are trying to get pregnant and have kids, there is an ebb and flow to desire. There's an ebb and flow to desire. There's a pastor writer named Ryan Weckenman, and his book is called Single Today. And his whole thing is, I want to be single today. And so I've got to live my life like that's what God has for me today. And if I have a different desire tomorrow, I need to pay attention to that. And so there's this freedom now, Paula, that didn't exist in the Christian circle, that didn't exist 50 years ago, that says like, I'm allowed to choose this as a viable path to an abundant life. And I don't know that I was taught that growing up.
No. I don't think it's part of our faith circles really at all.
Yes.
We don't talk about it. It's almost like you have to get married and have that family in order to feel fulfilled. And I think it's but there's so many examples in the Bible of men and women who chose to be single, right?
Yes.
And I think that's important to call out too. I want to ask you about, and you mentioned it a little bit ago, your Single Purpose League. But before we get to that, for those listening, a lot of women, a lot of moms who are married, or maybe they're single, right? Or maybe they are divorced, or maybe they are married. I want to know for those listening, because we want to help you, because like you just said, you don't have to get married. You want to. This is a desire. You're absolutely fulfilled. What are you looking for? I mean, maybe we know somebody. Maybe, what are you looking for? What are some of your non-negotiables? Let my community help you.
Come on.
And then if we have somebody, let us know how we can reach out to you. Okay. So tell us.
Yeah. Just slide into my DMs. Just slide into my DMs. I'm very available.
Everybody, we're going to put on our matchmaking hat.
Yes. Let's go.
Okay. So tell us.
Okay. So the first thing I'd say is please consider someone for me after you consider someone for your best girlfriend that lives in your actual community. So if you've got a guy in your mind, check on your best girlfriend in your actual community first and see if she wants him. And if she says no, I will take her leftovers. So first, go first to your actual best friends and then come to me. Well, do you know who my celebrity crush is?
No. Who is it?
Gru from Despicable Me. I love a bald villain. But I just think guys with, I know. I hear myself.
Love bald guys. Is what you're saying.
I love bald guys, but bless God, every guy can be a bald guy. Every guy can be a bald guy given the right amount of time. So this is really working in my favor.
Okay. Yeah. This is really working.
They don't have to be bald, but I really like bald guys. I know, but I love Gru. He's just got like a very tender heart, even though he used to be a bad guy. And he's got very sharp features. I tend to like guys with sharp features, and bald. When I'm talking about who they are as a human, not do they look like Gru. And again, I'm available. This is not, those are not non-negotiables. Gru is not a non-negotiable. I will also take Maui, right? Like from Maui to Gru, I'll take any Disney character you can come up with. But non-negotiables as far as who the men are is my faith life is the most important thing about me and to me, and Jesus is the partner I will have my whole life, no matter what. And so it's got to be someone who loves God and is pursuing God. He does not have to have a public faith life. The couple of times I've dated men in the public space, it has not gone well. So I much prefer my healthier dating relationships have been with men who have very different jobs than me, but I'm available to any of that. But a guy who prioritizes his faith. I like men who have jobs that they care about. but that can be a high school football coach, or that can be a government official, or anything in between.
Totally see you with a high school football coach, or or a soccer coach, or a baseball coach. Because I know you love sports,
right?
I could totally see that. Oh, I could.
I know, but just someone who feels like they've kind of found. I mean, I'm in my 40s. I'm not looking for someone who's still sussing out their career path. I would like someone who kind of goes like, I think I've sussed what God has made me to do, and I'm running after that because I am. And so those are kind of the two big ones, Paula. I mean, I live in Nashville and I live in New York. I split time between the two cities right now. And a man in one of those two cities would be most convenient, but that doesn't mean that's God. Yeah, I'm just very available. I about 7 years plus or minus is kind of my limit as far as what I think would be healthy for me as a person. I'm okay if he has kids. A lot of men that are my peers are either widowed or divorced and have their own kids. And I love kids. And so that's great. So
like you said, plus or minus 7 years. Sorry. We're talking mid 30s to early 50s.
Yeah. I'm 44. So mid 30s to early 50s is exactly right. Yeah.
Okay. Perfect.
I think younger than that, I'll feel like I'm raising him, like raise him up in the way they should go and they won't depart from it. Right. I'm not into that. I'm not trying to date. I used to teach elementary school. I know you guys about me. I taught 5th grade when I was 22. So I taught 10-year-olds when I was 22. So most of my first students are now 31, 32. I am unavailable to anyone that age. I cannot date anyone that is the same age of my first students that call me Miss Downs, right? So I'm unavailable to anybody in that age bracket.
Oh, yeah. That'd be a little traumatizing, I would imagine, for both parties.
Yeah.
Okay. So we know
100%.
That's a really good description. So everybody put on their thinking hat for Annie. Again,
that's right.
She's in Nashville and New York.
Yes.
Are you open to someone outside of those cities, or are we trying to stay in those two cities right now? I mean,
no, I'm open to it. I'm totally open to it. I have a lot of sky miles, so I can go places. And he also, I am worth flying to. So wherever he is, I'm worth flying to.
Yes. Yes, you are worth it. You are worth flying.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
So yeah, I'm available to other cities. I mean, I've had a crush on a guy in LA before. And I mean, and I grew up in Atlanta. So there's men in Atlanta that I've dated. And so I'm totally available to that. The path God has me on right now is revolving around these two cities. That does not mean that I know how the path goes next.
Yes.
And so, but you know me, Paula, I mean, I think I've said this to you in real life. Like one of the things I'm hoping is I'll pick a guy in Nashville or New York to kind of relieve the tension of which city do I want to actually plant in. I wish that would be helpful. It has not thus far. It has not thus far been all that helpful. So.
Oh, the way it's going is probably going to be somebody in Missoula, Montana. And you're like, what?
Right. And I'm like, all right, fine. As long as you can pack up a house in Nashville and New York for me and with me and we can get it to Missoula, fine.
I'm really feeling this, and I'm not trying to prophesy or anything here, but I'm really feeling some sort of high school coach out there for you. I know. He's such a good fit.
I love that.
You're so enthusiastic. You love sports. You love being around other kids, whether it's their kids.
And I like being that's right.
Or the players on the team. So I'm really feeling that. Okay. So let's say we have somebody in mind. And we're going to be bold and we're going to be thoughtful and we're going to reach out to you. Do we reach out on Instagram? How do we?
Yeah, that's great. I think you say to the guy, this would be true whether you're talking to me or your best friend. You say to the guy, hey, I want to introduce you to somebody. Are you looking to start dating someone right now? And then you get this. And then because there are times where people say to me, hey, Annie, can I set you up? And I go, hey, I just had a thing end and I'm like still crying at night. Can I wait a week? And if you if you just slide us both into each other's DMs, you don't know and we don't know if the intention, if we're both in a good place to meet and go on dates. And so you want to ask the guy, hey, are you in a place where I could introduce you to someone to possibly date? And he'll say, sure. Or, hey, not right now. It's middle of football season. I'm exhausted, whatever. And then, because I've already said it out loud, you already know I'm there. But if you're as you're talking first to the girlfriend in your life, you're going to say to her, hey, I thought of someone for you. Are you in a place where I can introduce you to someone? And are you wanting to go on dates? And if you get yeses from both of them, you've got my yes. If you get yeses from both of them, and then I would say you show them each other on Instagram, or you say to both of them, do you want me to connect you on Instagram or do you want me to connect you on text? Or do you want me and see what people want? For me, Instagram makes the most sense because I have a public job. It's good to say to the guy, hey, go look at her real quick. Are you cool with this? Like, this isn't getting smaller. So are you cool with this? And then I don't ever have to know if he isn't. I mean, my last dating relationship, not my last one, a couple of dating relationships ago, after 2 dates, the guy said, I like you a lot. I don't vibe with your job. And I said, go with God. I bless you. My job isn't going to get smaller. And so a man getting access for my particular life, a man seeing my public life before he steps in is helpful. And then just slide into my DMs. Have him slide, you slide, whatever you want to do.
Okay. When I dip, you dip, we dip. We're going to slide. We're going to do it all.
That's it.
All right. So talk to us about the Single Purpose League. You started this less than a year ago. Why'd you start it? What is it?
It's crazy, dude. First, thank you so much for having this conversation, Paula, because I do want my married friends to feel emboldened to ask their single friends, do you want me to set you up? And start thinking that way. Because once you've got the yes from the singles, like party on, just keep the communication high. And for the singles listening, keep the communication high and say what you really need. And it will be really fun.
That's good.
Okay. Single Purpose League. Here's what happened. I'll tell you really quick. Last summer of 23, we did a dating series on my podcast. That sounds fun. And it was called Summer Lovin'. And at the beginning of it, I wanted to email as many singles as we could and let them know it was happening. So I just got on Insta story. I just did a reel actually. And I said, hey, are you single? I just want to tell you something. And we were hoping to get 1,000 email addresses that week so that we could email them and say, hey, we're about to do this series that's just for you. Paula, we had 1,000 email addresses in about 5 hours. By the end of the week, we had 20,000 email addresses of single Christians, 20,000. And all of a sudden, my team and I had this moment where we were like, oh, God is telling a different story than we thought he was telling us right here.
Yes.
This is something else. And so we sat on it for the back half of 23 and really prayed and really brainstormed about like, how do we serve this community it is not that they aren't being served anywhere else. It's that when Annie F. Downs said, what do you need from me? 20,000 of them raised their hands.
Wow.
And so then it was like, okay, then there is something for me to do here. It is not an empty space. It's just a space that had a place for me to speak into it. That's why we created Single Purpose League, because we really wanted to talk to people, particularly singles that are faith people. That's why we call it Single Purpose League, because what we are asking is, what is my purpose while I'm single, and what's my single purpose? Because they're different. And so every month we talk about a different thing. For example, in November of 24, it was finances. We've talked about boundaries. We talked about sex. We talked about friendship. We talked about dating. There are a lot, like you said earlier, there are actually a lot of singles who do not want to get married, and they want community too.
Yeah.
And so we are balancing that of like, hey, if you want to get married, if you want to be dating, we'll teach about that. If you just want to figure out how do you have a savings account that lasts you the rest of your life because you don't want to get married and you're not going to share money, we'll talk about that too. And so it's beautiful. I mean, it's a Patreon community, and it's, like I said, I think we're at 2,200 people every month that are coming together and saying like, yeah, this is a resource that matters to me. It's a real gift. And the other thing that's happened, if you don't mind me telling you real quick, Paula, pastors have started coming around and saying, what do I do? And it's really beautiful, because when we asked our singles community, do you feel supported by your church? 65% of them said no, or not really. And then when we said, where do you want to meet someone? 3 of the top 10 places involved the church.
Wow.
And it's beautiful, because what singles were saying is, I don't feel fully supported here, but I'm still showing up and I'm still part of this community. And what we know about pastors that are leading churches right now is they're mostly male. They are vastly mostly married. And they got married when they were 20, because the path that they saw was, to be a lead pastor, you have to be married. So they went to seminary and got married in their 20s. So they don't know what it's like to be single now. And they were not taught in seminary how to pastor singles. And so they are doing the best they can with very little information or experience. And so what we get to do as singles is come alongside our pastors. Instead of complaining, we get to come alongside them and say, hey, I'm here. Can I help? Here's what we need. And then pastors can come alongside singles and go, what do you need? We actually made a resource, Paula, that we can share with your audience and they can give to their pastors. It's literally Pastoring Single. It's free. It's just a download. It's like, here's some questions. Here's some things like, dear pastors, do you have a single person who reads your sermon before you preach it? Because have you done all examples of married guys from the scriptures? Or do you have any examples? Here's a perfect example. When people teach on Sabbath, they say, turn off your phones and be with the people in your home. That's me by myself if I do that. So how do we teach on a Sunday morning about Sabbath if someone doesn't feel safe turning their phone off because they live alone?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's
and
good.
So we got to teach both. And so it's been really beautiful, Paula, because Single Purpose League is serving singles, but by creating it, we've also opened this door to churches that are where pastors are saying, hey, we really care about this. How do we do this well? And singles are saying, we really want to feel a part of our church. Please help us.
Yes, that's good. And like you said, 1 out of every 3 people at church is single.
Yes.
I want to be sensitive to that too. And I think we often don't know what we don't know. So, okay.
Yes,
so
right.
Single Purpose League, we're going to link to the league in the show notes. We'll also do that free downloadable that you're going to pass along as well. In closing, in parting, what is your one bit of encouragement to anyone that's single out there looking for love? Okay. Because again, not every single wants,
that's right. That's exactly right.
Relationship. So what is your one bit of advice to the singles out there? And what is your one bit of advice? And you've kind of already mentioned it several times, but your one bit of advice to those of us who are in relationships and have single friends and that may or may not want to set their single friends up.
As I said for married friends, and this is actually true for both, say what you want. Raise your communication between each other so that you can actually know if you want to set your friends up, are they available to it? And if you want to be set up, do your married friends know? And the last thing I would say to singles, Paula, is do not give up. Do not give up. Not every dating relationship is meant for marriage, but you can date and learn and grow and be loved and cared for, even if the relationship doesn't work. So if you want to get married, do not give up on dating. Keep trying. And every one of them is for your good. And don't do it in a vacuum. Get your community involved. Make sure people know you. Make sure people know him. You will be better for dating.
Annie, I love you so much. And I hope that you do.
I love you too.
The love of your life, right?
Thanks.
And I don't know if I believe in soulmates, but I think you can have a love of your life. I hope that you find the love of your life. And I feel like God had to call you to this. Like you were hesitant.
Yeah, girl.
Time.
Yeah. I was.
Very hesitant to go there. And I think that's what makes it beautiful. And sometimes we're called to things that either we don't feel equipped to do or we don't necessarily want to. But I think God's really opening so many doors. And he's really speaking to so many people through you and your message and your platform right now. So
well, listen, I'll tell you, if I'm listing out soulmates that God might have given me, our little group of friends are some of my soulmates. So I'm thankful that you are one of the people that when I think about who I connect in my soul with, thank you for being one of those friends that loves me so well and loves me so deeply and makes me remember that I am not without soulmates on this planet.
And someone that loves you so much that she wants to start the interview an hour earlier because she misses you so much. Right?
Precisely.
Oh, gosh. I love you, Annie.
I love you too.
All right, I'm going to share my takeaways from that conversation in just a second. But who didn't see that coming about Gru? I know I didn't. Just hilarious. Annie, you crack me up. Annie, there is somebody very special for you out there. And I think our community can play a part in that. Let's think of our single friends. Let's put our hesitation to the side and let's think of Annie. We know where to find her and how to connect her with hopefully the love of her life. My biggest takeaway, though, is our single friends want to be community matched. They want to know that we're thinking of them. And so we need to put that hesitation to the side and have some courage and boldness and just the thoughtfulness to be thinking of them and thinking on their behalf. But the way to do this, as Annie said, is, hey, I want to introduce you to someone. Are you interested in dating somebody right now? So broaching our single friends with that before we decide to randomly put them on a text thread with somebody and make it happen. So have the respect to, first of all, say, hey, I think there's somebody I want you to meet. Are you interested in dating right now? Let's just start thinking of our single friends and put our hesitation and discomfort to the side and start some matchmaking. I'm excited. I thought that this was just such a great conversation. I'm grateful to Annie for sharing her story. And if you want to join her Single Purpose League, we'll make sure that there's a link in the show notes and you can connect with Annie. I'll put all of that in the show notes as well. So next week, as we continue our series on relationships and dating, it is a doozy. We're talking about navigating your teenagers dating. And I'll be joined by therapists Sissy Goff and David Thomas, who've been on the show before. But we are answering all of your questions for this episode. That's all we're doing. We solicited questions from you, our listeners and viewers. So we are tackling all those questions in this episode. The questions range from when should they start dating to what is the purpose of dating in high school to boundaries and then our role as parents in the whole process. So make sure you tune in next week, a very special collaboration episode with Sissy and David about navigating your teen dating. It is so good. And then the following week, we're going to cap the series with an episode with John and I about how you can keep it spicy in your relationship with your partner. I know a lot of you are looking forward to that one. All right, I think on that note, that about does it for this week. But just a reminder, if you haven't done so already, make sure you rate and review the show. It does so much to ensure that these conversations, that this podcast continues to have a platform and that these conversations get elevated in culture. So I would be super grateful if you would do that. Make sure you're subscribed. I will see you next week as we keep talking about it. All right, see ya. I know you guys thought you were done with me, but not quite yet. I have one more thing to tell you about. If you're watching on YouTube or you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, don't forget to subscribe to the show. I don't want you to miss a single beat or a single conversation. And remember, my DMs are always open. Tell me what you want to talk about.